Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with co-host and producer Chris Pomay and co-host Nick Small, a weekly podcast show devoted to the CFL's 18-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. I hope everyone's doing well on this Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. Nick and I are going to have a great show tonight talking about an Argos upset win over the BC Lions on Friday night, 33-17. Only their second road win this year in 7 games. And both of the road wins have been against quality teams like the Montreal Alouettes and the BC Lions. And the Argos came into this game against BC, losing back-to-back games badly to East rivals. And going into BC, they were 4-18 in the last 22 games out there, and this is only their 5th win there in 23 games, so this is huge. And I'm looking forward to having Nick on and talking about Argos and Lions. Before we get to that, guys, I did get a letter today in the mail from Ontario Health. I got checked for colon cancer. When you turn 50 every 2 years, you need to get checked for colon cancer, and thankfully my results were negative, so I am cancer free. And I would tell guys out there to see your doctor regularly, get checked, and when you're 50 and over, make sure you do your colon cancer check through your family doctor as well. So it's positive news, and I'm looking forward to doing episode 13 tonight with my co-host Nick Small. By the way, guys, if you're looking for 2025 Toronto Argonauts season tickets, please contact season ticket rep Alex Christie at 416-815-5334, or you can email Alex at alex.christie@mlse.com. We're going to bring on Nick Small now. Hey, Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Chris. If there's any time I want to be proven wrong, getting a pick in, I will totally accept it if it means we beat the BC Lions. Not only were they able to win, but it was in such dominating fashion. I don't think anybody had it on their book that the Toronto Argonauts were going to blow the doors off the BC Lions in the way they did.
Especially with the road record coming into this game, 1-5, and coming off back-to-back losses to Ottawa and Hamilton. And BC, they've only won there now only 5 times in their last 23 games. So the Argos have beat BC both times this year. And I think one of the reasons why they won this game is they finally got off to a good start. They didn't get touchdowns early in the game, but they were up. And the Argonauts, when they play a clean game and they have a lead or a completely different football team than when they're trailing by double digits and throwing interceptions and fumbling the ball. So to me, getting off to a good start was important. And both the offensive line and defense lines were outstanding. I believe the Argos sacked BC quarterback 7 times, and Deshaun Amos another interception. So when you get 7 sacks in a game and an interception and play a relatively clean game, which the Argos did, the results work well. And this team, when they don't make mistakes and they play their game, is a dangerous team if they can play mistake-free football. But it's like any other team in the CFL, Nick. If you turn the ball over, make mistakes, have penalties, it's tougher to win games in this league, Nick. So I just want to get your thoughts on the win on Friday night in BC.
Yeah, starting your game 9-0 after the first quarter is certainly a lot better than starting down 14-0 like they have the last couple of weeks. Just thinking about how this game went, you talk about the pressure to BC Lions quarterbacks. One of the things they saw most of the night was the sky because, as you mentioned, 7 sacks for the Toronto Sack Exchange. Pretty impressive for them, given that they've struggled a little bit to generate pressure on quarterbacks. I think it says a lot about some of the struggles that the weakness of BC Lions offensive line that they're having right now. And it also goes to show a quarterback controversy with it too, because it showed that it didn't matter who you had in at quarterback, whether it was Nathan Rourke who played the whole first half, whether it was Vernon Adams Jr., or even bringing his name up here, Chase Bryce, the third string quarterback who came at the end and scored their only passing touchdown of the game. It seemed to really make not much of a difference which quarterback they had in, because all three of them were facing such intense immediate pressure from the Argonaut defense.
I'm going to say the turning point in this game was when BC made it 12-10 just before halftime. Everybody's like, oh crap, the Argos just had all these chances. It's a 2-point game. But that touchdown drive, their first touchdown drive of the game, was 12 seconds to halftime on a Kelly pass to Polk. Polk, by the way, had a great game, 6 catches for 116 yards and a touchdown. I really think that was kind of the nail on the Lions right there, because the Lions clawed back to make it a 2-point game. And then Chad Kelly, just that offense looked good on that last drive. And instead of settling for field goals, they got a touchdown right there. And it was that was huge to go back up 19-10 at halftime. Nick, thoughts on that drive right after BC scored?
Yeah, it was absolutely the response they needed. If you go in at halftime being down 12-10, you become a little more tense and nervous. But when they were able to respond with that touchdown of their own and regain the lead that BC had been working tooth and nail to get for the entirety of that first half, it allowed the Argos to sort of take control from that point afterwards. I'll give another huge compliment out as well. Another big play was yet another big Janarian Grant return. Wasn't a touchdown this time, but it was exactly the kind of thing they needed just to put them that little bit over the edge. And give a lot of credit to Lirim Hawrylahku as well. Some of those field goals were not easy. Almost I think he was set to tie the record, I believe, with 6 field goals. He didn't go out on the last one, but they decided to punt late in a situation where they might have had another chance. But the fact that Lirim Hawrylahku went 6 for 6, and with 2 extra points, including a 51-yarder, a really impressive performance from him as well.
Hey Nick, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but if there's an Argos on song hero this year right now, I would say Liam, because he had pretty big shoes to fill in Boris Beatty. I know Boris has had a tough year with the Elks, but he did do pretty well with the Argos for the last couple of years. And Liam hasn't been in the CFL since 2019. So credit to the Argonauts organization for bringing Liam back. And to me, he's the Argos on-song hero this year. So
Yeah,
far.
Liram's got really good mechanics to his delivery, his kicking ability, and it wasn't, again, looking at where he was in NFL camps. I think he was with the Carolina Panthers and Dallas Cowboys. Don't quote me on that, but
Yes.
among other teams, he was with NFL camps. So it, he was able to prove his stuff at the elite level in the NFL, and coming back to Canada here and proving he's still got it, despite being a bit of a wily veteran now. He's still got quite the impressive leg on him, and the accuracy shows for it. Even looking at how he, even in the one he missed the extra point there in that game, where they won by the Rouge. So
Absolutely. Nick, I forgot about this, but we'll get back to the Argos. If you want to give us a quick 2-minute update on the OUA football this weekend and the game that you went to between Western and Laurier pulled off the biggest upset in a long time. I don't think they beat Western in the regular season since 2006, I believe. It's been a while.
Yeah, first regular season win for the Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawks against the Western Mustangs, who have long time been the number one team in the OUA. So it was an awesome moment to be there with my dad and to watch that, particularly right after the Argonauts win the night before. Just bringing up a couple of the statistics. Yeah, there you go. Total offense 531 yards for the Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawks. Net passing yards 385 yards and 2 touchdowns. Taylor L. Gersma 24 for 29. And Tanner Nelms who's I believe drafted by the Montreal Alouettes, 4 yards shy of his third 100-yard rushing game in the first 3 games of the season for Laurier. He only had 96, but averaged 6 yards a carry on 16 carries. You had Ethan Jordan, who was the leading receiver, 5 catches for 113 yards. And gonna shout out as well Ethan Bayfield, number 26, who had a sweet interception in that third quarter and really helped put the game on ice for the Golden Hawks, just as Western was clawing a little back into it. Laurier was up 40-16 at one point, and the final score ended up being 43-28. Evan Hillock, his numbers, I think, stand better than I think they actually performed. He was 332 for 79. His longest was 79 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, but only 18 for 31. The offensive line did not look good for Western, which was rare to see. Opening play of the game, ran with the ball, number 6. Gonna butcher the name here. Keanu Yazbek fumbled on the opening play of the game, and it just let things go Laurier's way from that point on. And as you can see in the statistics, they had to abandon the running game. Hillock had to throw the entire night, and that longest play of 80 yards was off a swing pass with a minute left in the game. So really, it could be down to just 240 yards passing.
How important is this win to the Laurier football, Nick?
It's huge. They control their own destiny now. It has been a very long time since, the last time they won the Yates Cup was 2016 when they beat the Western Mustangs, and of course, like you mentioned before that, 2006 was the last time they beat them in the regular season. So for them to have this win over Western, they have the opportunity to run the gauntlet, and especially because the Laurier program the last couple of years, they've kind of been a bit of bad luck with the schedule. They don't get to play York. They don't get to play U of T, the two arguably easiest teams in the OUA to face off against. They don't get to face either of them. So there's a little bit of adversity through that. They're constantly playing quality opponents week in and week out. They showed it in a really exciting game last week where Guelph was step for step with them till late in the game. Same with the week before with McMaster. And then they're able to come out of the gate and blow the doors off of the team that has been the bane of their existence for the last 20 plus years. And one last point I'll get on to: who was the quarterback for the Western Mustangs the last time they lost to the Golden Hawks? Do you know?
Nope, I'm stumped.
It's the current head coach of the Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawks, Michael Folds. So shout out to him.
Oh, okay.
Shout out to him and Mr. Taylor L. Gersma. They were phenomenal out there, and it was just such a brilliant game to watch. So I was really
having him as your head coach, being a player and being on that Western program, which has been consistently good and strong for decades. I think that's going to help Laurier go forward, because you got a guy that played the game. He knows the quarterback position. He knows all aspects, and him being from Western, that is a great move, Laurier, and that should help the program as well. I see Guelph beat McMaster as well. So who's Laurier playing this week?
Just to retort on your comment there, he's been the head coach of the Golden Hawks since 2013. So since then, they've already seen a Yates Cup, and so um, Yates Cup champions 2007, 2008 as a player, I believe, and then 2016 as a coach. I might have that wrong. But anyways, next week they play in Waterloo. The Battle of Waterloo this time is in the University of Waterloo, just a stone's throw away from their field. So it should be one that I think Laurier's got looking to play the spoilers there, and then the week after is their homecoming game against the Ottawa GGs.
And before we wrap this up on the Laurier football, what's their website for people out there that might want to catch one of their games?
So if you go on to the oua.ca sports page, you can go into sports and then into football there. I think the website to buy the tickets is on laurierathletics.ca. Regardless whether you live close to Laurier or Waterloo or Western out in London or Queens in Kingston, go see some of your local OUA or U Sports if you're outside of Ontario. Go see your university and college teams play. These guys are good enough and get drafted every year into programs in the Canadian Football League in the Canadian draft. There's some outstanding athletes there who are aspiring to be the next superstars of the league. And it's a lot of fun to watch because there's a few tweaks that are different to what we have in the CFL, but there's a lot of really good playmaking. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks. There's a lot of really good defenders, some amazing special teams play. It's a lot of fun. And when tickets are $12 as an alumni, 15 as an adult, it's dirt cheap and lots of fun.
All right, Nick, we're going to get back to the Argonauts as well. Nick, I wanted to ask you this. How important was a strong start in this game against the BC Lions? And what did you like from Ryan Dinwiddie and this coaching staff and their adjustments after their back-to-back road losses to Ottawa and Hamilton?
Yeah, the big thing was that they didn't abandon their run game so early. It was really hard, too, in both those situations because while it was for different reasons, where in the Hamilton game, offensively, they were okay, but the big problem was the defense let Bo Levi Mitchell sling 2 deep passes early, and then the Ottawa game, a lot of weather related instances, balls floating, balls getting tipped, going straight to Ottawa Red Blacks players in every situation. Being in that hole early meant they had to abandon the run game. But this time you could see it was really key in the game plan that they were focused on ball security and running the ball to make sure that Chris disappeared. Well, yeah, focusing on running the ball to making sure that they're not becoming too one-dimensional with the passing game. What I think we see sometimes as we saw in the Ottawa game and also in the Hamilton game. Oh, welcome back.
I'm back. I apologize, Nick, but I am back, and thanks for covering for me for about 30 seconds there.
Yeah, so like I was saying...
But as for the Ottawa game, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the Ottawa game was just completely a bad effort by the entire team for the whole game, and it happens to everybody. And then Hamilton game, like you said, if they didn't give up 21 points, it's just basically when you fall behind at home or on the road, especially, it's hard to always keep coming back. And I just feel this Argonaut team can be dangerous if they play clean, mistake-free football and get off to good starts. Like, obviously, they didn't get all their touchdowns early in this game, but just getting off to a good start is huge. And I really think this win was really important for the Argonauts, not just because they're over 500. It's just basically to say, hey, we're still a good football club, and they've beaten BC twice this year. They've beaten Winnipeg. They've beaten Montreal. They've beaten Saskatchewan. They've beaten a lot of good teams. And if they can just play more consistent I think this team can go on a run in the playoffs, even if they're not at home, and they still have a chance. I don't think they're going to catch Montreal at this point, but I think they still can catch Ottawa with that Ottawa loss to Hamilton last week. And I feel the Argos could still at least host a playoff game at BMO Field if they can just finish out the season strongly here.
Yeah, absolutely. They have this game against Hamilton coming up. They have another home game 2 games after, I believe, against Ottawa and head to head, and that's, I think, their last one together. So yeah, they absolutely still have the opportunity now, particularly with the tie that Ottawa had. That kind of brings them down a little bit. Toronto has an opportunity to still jump them, so it's certainly well within possibility now, and yeah, I think they just what really I thought the last 2 games was a challenge was that the defense hadn't quite played up to the same standard that they had, earlier on in the season, and, like, a lot it's not necessarily that they just didn't play well, there's a lot of factors in it. There was a number of injuries to guys, a lot of whom we might see coming back off the injury list this week against Hamilton. Let's keep in mind that the last time they played, uh, there was no Jared Brinkman, there was no Winton McManus, and both of those guys look set to be coming back this week against Hamilton. So
And by the way, Ottawa has some bad news.
yeah,
Darius Pickett is out for the year with a torn pec, I believe. That is a huge loss, and Ottawa really did get killed by Hamilton Saturday in Hamilton. You got to give the Tiger Cats credit, even though they most likely won't make the playoffs. They are playing better football, and they put up 37 points against a good Ottawa defense. And losing Pickett is huge for Ottawa. And Ottawa's got another tough game this weekend against Montreal too, Nick. And by the way, we've got a viewer. Robbie Schneider, who has his own podcast show in Buffalo, New York, 716 Sports Blizzard Podcast. Robbie's a huge Buffalo Bills fan. My deepest sympathies, Robbie. And Robbie wants to say, hey, guys, great show. Thank you, Robbie. And please check out his podcast show. And if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, his podcast is a show to go to.
hey Chris, it could always be worse. You could lose a game because your Eagles choose to go on a fourth goal conversion instead of just taking the points. So it could always be worse.
Hey, football
But
is a marathon. Football is a game of risks. Sometimes the risks work, sometimes they don't. And football's a marathon season, and the CFL to some degrees like the NFL, fans sometimes overreact to a game, and I've done it myself as well. So there's still 15 games left for the Eagles to get better and improve. Just like the Argonauts, they still got another, I think, another 5 games left before the playoffs. And you know what? It's a marathon season. 1 week, 1 game at a time, and mistakes do happen. So I will leave that about the Eagles.
yeah,
By the way, Mike Hogan is an Eagles fan too. So
I'm well aware. Don't worry. I will say though, like we kind of talked about not too long ago, a lot of people say the CFL season doesn't really begin till Labor Day, and now we're well past Labor Day now and coming into the stretch.
And I wanted to say too, the Argonauts, one of the players of the game for the Argonauts, we'll do this a little bit earlier than normal. Ralph Hawley having 3 sacks. Robbie Smith, I think he's a Laurier alumni, if I'm correct.
Yes.
He had 2 sacks, and they had 2 more sacks. So the Argonauts, like I said, we brought this up before. Their offensive line and defensive line, when they play their game, they're going to be good. And if they can get Jarrett Brakeman back, that's like adding another free agent to this Argonauts defense. If they get Jarrett Brinkman back, and the Jake Sorenza trade, as much as we loved Curly Gittens Jr., including myself, I think that trade I'd make over again because Jake Sorenza has been a big asset to the Argos front 4 this year.
Yeah, and I mean, well, Curly Gittens was also a Laurier alumni who got traded. Yeah, and what's really also going to step it up even more on this defense is if their leader, Winnie McManus, comes back, especially with the possibility I heard out of our friend Rick from the Ticats Talk Network that Greg Bell might be dealing with an Achilles injury of his own. So it could potentially mean James Butler comes back amidst a little bit of tenacity with him and head coach Scott Milanovich potentially. So while I don't know the Hamilton side of things quite as well as the Argonaut side, it sets up Toronto in a really good spot to completely obliterate the running game that Hamilton has going for them the last couple games, and really put a lot of pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell to be able to stretch the ball down the field like they were able to in the Labor Day game.
I know we've already talked about the defense, and we talked about one unsung hero this year, Liam. But I'd say in this game the unsung hero would be Deshaun Amos. Thoughts on his play this year? I think
Yeah.
he's really developed nicely.
Yeah, well, we saw in the Labor Day game when he went down, like watching it from where I was behind the Argonaut bench, it definitely didn't look very good. And the way he was kind of, hand on his shoulder, you're really worried it was going to be one of these a torn ligament or something really bad, or broken arm or something like that was going to have him for the year. But then he ended up a game time decision, did end up playing some in that game against Ottawa. And then now he comes back in this game in BC, and compared to playing, a wet, cold outdoor field in Ottawa versus coming to a nice indoor climate controlled field in BC, was able to play at his best. And as you mentioned, he had the key interception there late in the game, which really contributed to putting the game on ice. Yeah. So yeah, I think overall among the secondary, the Deshaun Amos has been one of the most stable components of that Toronto Argonauts secondary through a little bit of a circus, for lack of a better word, through the rest of the D, as we saw like Mason Pierce being cut not that long ago. Not to talk a particular anyone specific, but
One thing too, we talked about how they did a good job on the passing game against BC. McInnes was the only one that was really effective. I think he had 7 catches for 95 yards. But William Stanback, they really took him out of the game. 6 carries for 21 yards. So the defense overall, I think, might have played their best game of the season against BC Friday night on the road. I
it was,
know they did well in Montreal, but to me, this might be their best all-around performance.
it was definitely their best since Chad Kelly came back, because I mean, I know we talk about the turnovers in the Ottawa game, but I think when you really look in the grand scheme of it, Chad's not really, like, even the interceptions haven't necessarily been on really bad reads like they were in the East final. A lot of it was weather related. The defense, though, on the other hand, the defense cost them the Hamilton game straight up by letting Bo throw 70-yard touchdown passes whenever he felt like it. And then the Ottawa game, while the offense tried to get back into it, you got to give a lot of credit to Drew Brown and them for Ottawa's offense for bringing them back into the game, or maintaining that lead. Whereas in this game, the defense was really able to shut down anything, especially when Vernon Adams came in. And we've seen in the past, like in Hamilton in the 2021 East Final, where they kind of struggled when a new body comes in. They weren't able to do that. BC this week, they shut down whoever was in behind center.
I find Kelly, when he doesn't try to play a hero ball, is a much better quarterback. And hey, let's give him credit too. And Chad Kelly, like I said, he's had some bad games, but this game I think was his best game in a long time. Because the East Final, and then he went 10 months without playing. So to me, I think Kelly was great. He had 10 carries for 56 yards and a touchdown. And I think passing wise, he was 18 for 28, 268 and 1 touchdown. So 2 touchdowns he contributed and over 300 yards of offense. So I would say Chad Kelly was one of the stars of the game, along with Ralph Hawley, who had 3 sacks, and I would say better consistency. As soon as you want a field goal out of him, obviously you want to get touchdowns every time you get the ball. But I would say Liam, Hawley, and Chad Kelly are my 3 stars of the game against the BC Lions. Nick.
Yeah, I feel a little bit bad for Isaiah Cage in this game. He had a bit of a rough go for a good chunk of that game, particularly I think because he was lined up against Matthew Betts, who returned the O line. I don't think it's necessarily been their best game, but what I really liked about Chad's play was that when he knew the O line was starting to collapse around him and he didn't have a guy open, rather than forcing a risky throw, he decided to take that option to tuck in and run, which led to ball protection, which led to sustained drives and reduce that risk of turnovers. On the other part of the running game, they definitely did run the ball a lot more. Even though it might not necessarily be as
Nobody, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it
Nobody
wasn't like
stood
he
out in
didn't
this game.
carry
Yeah,
ran
yeah.
for
Go ahead.
he took 11 carries for 41 yards, so 4 yards a carry. He didn't have one of these 8 yard a carry games like he did earlier in the year. Dan Attaboy was very similar, 9 carries for 34 yards. So uh and yeah, I think if you take away there's even more average yards of rushing for Chad if you take away the sneaks, because I know Cam Dukes came in for a couple, but he took some as well. Give a huge shout out to Makai Polk. That's one I will have on my list. He had a really good game.
I
Yeah,
think 6 catches for 116, one
yeah,
touchdown.
Janarian Grant, I mentioned before, another big return. So there's a lot of people on this team who stepped up this week.
I'm gonna say this. I think this was a team win, and like I said, this team came in 4-18 in their last 22 games in Vancouver. So it's not an easy place to win on the West Coast. And BC, regardless of their struggles, is still a good team. So to me, this was a very important win for the Argo Psyche, heading back to BMO Field Friday for the first time
Okay.
in I think 3 weeks against Hamilton. By the
Okay.
way, the running game, nobody dominated other than Kelly with 56 yards. Kerry had 40 yards and 31. It was kind of a more of a running by committee game, which is fine too, as long as they're running the ball effectively. It was a solid win. Go ahead,
Okay.
Nick.
Now I put the question for you. Now we're taking off our blue hats. We're putting on orange. Not this orange, because that's the Indigenous Truth and Reconciliation game practice uniform for the Argos. But let's pretend we're BC Lions head coaches. Who do you start next week? Because I think you're starting to
You
cause a bit of a quarterback controversy.
you gotta go. You gotta go with Rourke. You brought him in here. You brought him back from the NFL. You're paying him a whack of money. It's the same thing with the Argos when Chad Kelly came back. You're gonna win or lose. For so no disrespect to Vernon Adams Jr. Right now you got to go with Nathan Rourke, and I imagine Rick Campbell, if they continue this down spire, is going to probably end up losing his job in the offseason. I don't think they'll fire him now, but I personally, my opinion, Nick, you got to stick with Nathan Rourke this year, win or lose. Too
Well,
much money is invested in him as
Well,
well.
remember what I said last week when, they were down early. The Argonauts were in a huge hole to Ottawa, and you said, would I have pulled Chad Kelly? And I said I would not. And now you see kind of it's a little bit different in BC's context because, of course, while Rourke was doing his thing and then came back and has been good the last couple games leading up to the Toronto game, Vernon Adams got injured. But at that point, he was playing looking like he was the lead MOP candidate for most outstanding player in the league. So I think that's what really drives the big problem with it, because I don't know how you go about putting a tandem thing in, and we don't, and it's not just a BC thing. We can look at, like, we can look at
Teams have one in
Edmonton.
the teams have one. Sorry, Nick. Teams in the past have one with tandems. Generally, you want your starter and your backup, but in CFL and pro football, you need that backup quarterback. And I really think
Oh,
the money factor, obviously, the big factor, but I think you got to go with Rourke
oh,
the rest of this year.
if I can also add
Go ahead.
another comparison, Edmonton, they've announced Trey Ford is starting, even though McLeod Bethel Thompson has looked amazing in his last two
Yes,
games. So
I agree with that as well. And the thing is, if Ford gets hurt again or struggles, they have McLeod Bethel Thompson there. And I think that was a great move by the Elks bringing him in here. He can also mentor Trey Ford as well as help develop him as well. So, and the Elks have a big game this week against Winnipeg. Winnipeg's playing really good football. This is going to be a really good test for Trey Ford board as a young quarterback because you're facing one of the defenses in the Canadian Football League, if not the best, against Winnipeg. So that game intrigues me this weekend.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, let's not forget how it wasn't very long ago Edmonton was in a tailspin to start the year, and where there was a lot of criticism about McLeod playing, and now it seems pretty. I don't know. It seems I get why you're putting Ford in, but you're also stepping off the hot hand a little bit, putting someone who's coming off the injured list. So yeah, that's. And then of course, as we saw, Chris Strevler is for Winnipeg is out for the season now too with the injury he suffered. I think it was 3 torn ligaments in his leg. A lot of really nasty leg injuries across the league to a lot of players right now.
Thoughts on Winnipeg bringing in Jake
Domagala.
Domagala and Brian Scott. Fingers crossed Brian gets the opportunity to be the number 2 quarterback
Yeah, we'll see what.
with Winnipeg.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Brian Scott, I'll tell anybody in Winnipeg who's listening to this show, you're going to love him because he is an absolute class act and a heck of a gentleman. I'll shout out my friend Justin, who has been rooting for Mr. Scott all year long. And Brian was nice enough to send him a jersey as a thanks for the constant support he showed. So that's a really nice gesture from Brian Scott and what kind of an individual he has. So yeah, you're getting a really good guy out there. So and I'm with the exception of when he is playing against the Toronto Argonauts, I hope he has a fantastic game every night.
All right, Nick, this segment's going to be a little harder today because it was a win, but it's our normal segment called the good, the bad, and ugly, which is I think the ugly is going to be hard to find in this game against the BC Lions. But for me, I'm going to go first.
I got one. I got a really good one.
You want to go?
Yep.
Go first. Go, Nick.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick.
Here is my Ben Major impersonation. The kick hit the scoreboard again. I don't know if it necessarily come as ugly, but that was certainly one of the funniest moments of the game.
Definitely. I would say for me, the good was Chad Kelly. The bad, maybe the offense not putting touchdowns on the board early in the game. The ugly, I did not see any ugly in this game. So overall, I would say Kelly was good. Polk was good. I think Polk's best game as a professional receiver. And the only bad thing was the offense did settle for field goals in the first half. And if they can just get even 1 or 2 more touchdowns a game, that would make it easier on the defense at the end of the game as well. But overall, nothing ugly about this win. It was basically a very good win.
Yeah, maybe the ugly stuff doesn't so much come from the game itself. It comes from things like a certain 3 Down Nation article that got a lot of criticism for some of the things it brought up. One of the ones I found, which was pretty wild. So you know how they do like kiss cam and things like that nature. The apparently one they do is having a baby like Hakuna Matata, Lion King. Putting the baby up to the sky. Apparently, one they did this week was they had recorded a chunk of a fan like in the stands eating popcorn or cotton candy or something, and then they rewound it so it looked like they were spinning it back out. That was kind of. I haven't seen footage of what that looked like on the video board, but that's probably maybe not ugly, but very gross.
All right, Nick. Next question. I've already answered this one, but how important was this performance against a good BC team on the road going forward to the 2024 season? And I want to get your thoughts on the opponents this week at BMO Field for the first time this season. The 4-9 Hamilton Tiger Cats, who have 50% of their wins against the Argos.
Yep. Well, it goes to show you that it's not how many times you win on the road, it's who you win on the road. So far, the Argonauts have only won 2 times on the road, but it was against the favorites to win the Grey Cup, the Montreal Alouettes, to give them their first loss of the season. And it was against a BC Lions team that was heavily projected to obliterate them. And instead, it went the other way. So it's it's huge. It puts the Argonauts right back in things, especially with Ottawa losing to Hamilton too. I'm excited that the Tigers now finally get to face our crowd, particularly because I didn't go to the first game, but I was at the Labor Day game, so I know what it's like when you're the visitor in there and how hard it is in this matchup. I think sometimes that's what makes the Ballard Trophy a little bit easier for Hamilton to win because they have the home field advantage through the 3 games. But yeah, it should be a really exciting matchup. We've talked a lot about how the Argonauts look, how Hamilton looks coming in, injuries. A lot of guys are coming back on defense, so I can bet you they want to play big, especially against their arch rivals down from the Hammer.
Both losses to Hamilton were 3-point losses, and both losses were off to bad starts. So
Yeah,
for me, the Argonauts need to come out on a strong note, and they need to establish the run. They need to jump on the Tiger Cats right away. And to me, I still feel the Argonauts are a better football club than the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I don't think the Argos want to lose 3 times in a row to Hamilton and at BMO Field. I really think and this game means a lot to the Argos too, because they still have a chance of getting that second place spot down by 3 points to Ottawa. And Hamilton, they pretty well need to win out just to have a chance. So if the Argos can win this game Friday night, they can pretty well put a nail in the coffin of the 2024 Hamilton Tiger Cats. And I just really think hopefully they'll have some new wrinkles ready for the Hamilton Tiger Cats Friday night, because both games in Hamilton, both disastrous starts, and they really need to see how Hamilton does when they fall behind, because teams generally on the road, you fall behind, they're not nearly as good. And Hamilton has not played at BMO Field for over a year now.
it's crazy to think looking at it right now, but if Hamilton does beat Toronto, Calgary manages to beat Saskatchewan, and Edmonton loses to Winnipeg this week, you could have a scenario where then we're talking Hamilton crossing over to the West and playing BC or Winnipeg. So yeah, it's not over for Hamilton, which is crazy to say with only 4 wins to their name, but the parity this year has been insane, and it's really led to this weird anybody can beat anybody, it seems, on any given week. So there is still a lot to fight for on Hamilton's side, but I do think that if the Argos are able to pull this one out, I think it's going to be really hard for Hamilton to do anything to come back into a playoff scenario. It, like you said, it's pretty much all and done. So there's a lot on the line for the Argonauts, and like you mentioned, if they can avoid coming down 14-0 after the first quarter, if they can even keep jab for jab at par with them, and then ramp it up in the second half like they've done for most of their games this year, they should be in a good position to win.
By the way, I have the CFL media release here, and right now, Nick, for the Eastern Division, a Montreal win and a Toronto loss. Montreal clinches a home playoff date. Ottawa win. Ottawa clinches a playoff berth. Western Division right now, which is all really under 500
Uh,
teams struggling. No team can clinch the Western Division right now. And this weekend's games, we've got Toronto Hamilton Friday night at 7 o'clock, and then Friday at 9:30, Saskatchewan and Calgary. Saturday at 3, we have Montreal and Ottawa, and Saturday, September 21st, 7 p.m., Winnipeg, Edmonton. So if you're a big CFL fan, you got 2 games on Friday night and 2 games on Saturday. And I think this is going to be a very good Week 16 for the Canadian Football League. And
yep.
it's becoming crunch time in the CFL because it's not that far away from the playoffs, Nick.
No, not by any means. The bookies right now have the Argos as 6.5 point favorites, by the way. So they're pretty heavily favored over Hamilton right now, despite Hamilton winning their last 2 games. And like, yeah, you look at the passing yardage, and Bo Levi Mitchell, despite not having as much play in some of these games, he's right now sitting at 3,682 passing yards on the season, almost a full 500 yards ahead of second place Jake Mayer.
Okay, Nick. What are some of your keys to an Argos win at BMO Field
Okay.
versus the 4-9 Tiger Cats, who are trying to remain alive
Well,
for a playoff spot?
so don't go down 14-0 after the end of the first quarter. Don't go down 14-0 after the end of the first quarter. Don't go down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. I think they get better as the game goes on. Even in the games where they've been well out, they've responded every time in the second half and looked better. The last time they didn't have that showing was the game against Calgary on the road, which they blew. Every other game, pretty much, they've looked better in the second half. So I think as long as they keep it close early in the game, especially at home where they've been dominant the last 3-4 seasons, just don't get in a hole early. That's the only thing that can really blow things apart. Run the ball, play it safe. Obviously, if a guy's wide open downfield, get the ball to him, but don't try to get too cute with making fancy throws. Take what's there. There's a lot of time left early in the game, and the one thing you can't afford is to be in a tremendous hole right out of the gate, and when you have to abandon your run game and look really one-dimensional.
Chris Jones, whether you like him or not, he has done a really good job taking over their defensive coordinator. And I think a key matchup in this game, Nick, is going to be the Argos offensive line against Toronto's O line against Hamilton's front four. And I actually, I'm going to say this. It's going to come down to the line play, the offensive line and the D line. And I felt Hamilton won those battles, those two games in Hamilton. I felt that Hamilton's offensive line and defensive line were much stronger. So to me, I'm going to basically which lines play better is going to win this game as well. And the Argos have to try to force Bo Levi Mitchell to throw interceptions too. So I think the Argos defense needs to at least get one or two takeaways. And I think both lines have to outplay Hamilton's. And like I said, Chris Jones has a really good job with Hamilton's defense recently.
Yeah, well, let's also
Go ahead,
not
Nick.
forget that defensive line is built up with guys like Dwayne Hendricks, Brendan Barlow, Deontay Knight, middle linebacker backing up Trevor Hoyt. So, and Jamal Peters in at slot. Sorry, not slot back. Boundary side corner.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of former Argonauts that get amped up for this game on the defensive side. And I know in the Labor Day game they like taking shots at Chad whenever they had a chance. So the Argonauts are going to have to cleanly retaliate back, especially, and like I said, especially if Bell's not playing. It might leave a bit of a controversial scenario there on how much do they rely on the game with the running game with James Butler, assuming he's the guy who dresses in Bell's place.
He might have a little chip on his shoulder too, eh? So even if Greg Bell doesn't start this game for Hamilton due to injury, James Butler's still the X factor. And Nick, one other guy I'm worried about is Tim White. Tim White hasn't had the most consistent great year, but he seems to get his A game up for the Toronto Argonauts. So to me, James Butler is intriguing, and Tim White as well. And Stephen Dunbar Jr., who they got back from the Elks, you got to keep an eye on him too. So for me, the Argos defense needs to put pressure on Bo Levi Mitchell, and maybe they might not get 7 sacks. But if they can get pressure, even if they don't get sacks, they can maybe force some bad throws or get some interceptions. And I feel the Argos defense is going to get at least 1 pick six in this game.
The one asterisk I will put on this game as well, just going back on the injury charts. So the good news is a lot of guys are coming back. Jared Brinkman, Dejon Brissett, Isaiah Cage, Wyndham McManus, Gregor McKellar, Dadrick Hansen. The only asterisk I'll have is over the last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, Janarian Grant has not participated with a chest-related injury. So I don't know if it's too early for anybody to speculate whether it's, bruised rib or just, I don't know, shortness of breath, maybe a cold or something. I don't know, but just
if
just
Grant can't go, okay. Hey Nick, if Grant can't go, who would you have? Devontae McMahon? Would you have him fill in for Grant if
Well,
Grant's
McMahon, yeah,
unavailable Friday night.
Yeah, McMahon would probably take his spot there. And then who they have as the other back out there? There's a couple of options. It could be Dave Unger, it could be Tommy Neal, it could be Dan Attaboy. I think the only thing you worry that is earlier in the season, Dan fumbled a couple or bobbled a couple early, so you can maybe see Kevin Mattal maybe get an opportunity. It could be a number of the wide receivers. Toronto to me doesn't seem like a team. They're not going to put someone like Royce Metier into return, I don't think, or McFadden. They're not going to have a cornerback return or anybody in the secondary. I think to me it would probably have to be by Deontay McMahon for sure is one. I don't know who two would be, and they might rotate guys into it. It also depends because how early on in the game goes. If McMahon's in the better return spot, they might kick to him because it's McMahon and it's not Janarian Grant. But then maybe they might. So it might be more important on the second person's ability to lead block for McMahon.
Hey, before we wrap this show up, Nick, I wanted to get your thoughts on two former Argonauts, S.J. Green, who did help the Argos to a Grey Cup in 2017, and the flying Hawaiian Chad Owens going into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame this past weekend, along with Weston Dressler, Marvin Coleman, and Vince Goldsmith as well. Just thoughts on that.
Yeah, talking specifically just about S.J. Green and Chad Owens. I mean, Green was when he came to Toronto from Montreal, it was almost like they wrote him off. He was ready to retire and whatnot, and he came out and had a fantastic season there with Toronto when he was there. And I look a lot at with his number 19. The guy who took 19 after he left the Argos was Curly Gittens Jr. And I think what it really did, particularly for him, for Curly, was he had someone to really learn the art of the game from one of the best to ever play in that wide receiver position. And then when we come on to talking about Chad Owens, for me, that 2012 season, the Ricky Ray trade, him with Chad Owens, the Flying Hawaiian, and Andre Dury, who was part of the Mississauga Minor Football League program, the same one the late Pete Martin founded and ran for so many years. The three of them were heroes to me growing up as a kid playing minor football in the early 2010s and late 2000s. I don't have them on my wall mantle now, but I look at all those years they played together. And as a kid, when I was playing, that was the team I was watching as a kid for so many years when I went down to Argos games at the Sky Dome with my family. So it means a lot, and it shows how much their impact has had on Canada and on the Canadian game. So and not to mention everybody else as well for their contribution to Canadian football. So for all of them, we say thank you and welcome to the Hall of Fame.
Was it Jim Barker that brought Chad Owens to Toronto in 2010, I believe? Owens was originally with the Alouettes, but I think it was Jim Barker that brought him to the Argonauts, and what a huge impact he had on the Argonauts franchise. And I think next year, personally, I can't speak for the Argonauts or the Alums Association, but I feel next year Chad Owens will be up as an all-time Argo in 2025, in my opinion.
Yeah, having his name added to the Canadian Football Hall of Fame definitely lends itself to that, especially given that he's played the overwhelming majority of his career with the Argos. If I remember correctly, he played a season with Hamilton and
didn't look right seeing him as a Tiger Cat.
And with Saskatchewan as well, but I don't think he even played the full season in either circumstance. And yeah, never was quite the same, which I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but and now of course
it's like Brandon Banks. Brandon Banks didn't look like It's just like Brandon Banks. He just didn't look like he didn't look like a Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, but the difference was Brandon Banks was able to win a Grey Cup with Toronto, whereas Chad was never going to with Hamilton. Yep.
But Banks was pretty wild at the end of his career when he came to Toronto. Anyways, he was
He
pretty. He wasn't the same guy that he was in Hamilton, but it still didn't look right, Nick. That's my point. Certain guys don't look right in Argos or Hamilton colors, but it is a bit. That's why it makes this rivalry special, because you see a lot of former Cats in Toronto and a lot of Argonauts in Hamilton, and this game's going to be great Friday. Even though I can't be at this game Friday, I'll be in Buffalo. I will be recording it, and when I get home from Buffalo at about 1 o'clock in the morning, I will be watching the game, and I have a good feeling the Argos are going to play a very good game. And Nick, before we wrap this show up, guys, we're going to do our week 16 picks. At Hamilton, Toronto, Friday night, Saskatchewan, Calgary, Saturday doubleheader, Montreal and Ottawa, Winnipeg at Edmonton, and BC having a bye week. Nick, do you want to go first on week 16 picks?
Sure. I've got 34-23 Toronto. I've got Saskatchewan over Calgary on the road. I've got Montreal over Ottawa on the road, and I've got Edmonton over Winnipeg at home.
All right, Nick. Friday night game, Hamilton, Toronto. I've got the Argos winning this. I say it's going to be a third straight 3-point game. That time, winning it on a walk-off field goal, 31-28 Argonauts. The other Friday night game, Saskatchewan, Calgary. Right now, Saskatchewan is just regressing and not playing really good football after their very good start. I think Calgary will pull this game out, and this will be another close game. I think it'll be a 17-14 game, and then Montreal, Ottawa. Ottawa is railing right now. What I want to see is how Ottawa is going to respond for getting beaten down. They got spanked by Hamilton 37-21. I want to see how Ottawa responds. And Montreal's coming off a tie against Calgary. Wasn't one of Montreal's best games this year, but they did get a tie. And we'll talk about that some other point about ties. But I feel Montreal is going to pull this game out against Ottawa. And I see it's going to be another close game. I think it's going to be 23-20 Montreal. I see a lot of really close games this week. And then Winnipeg, Edmonton. My brain says Winnipeg and my heart says Edmonton. And I'm going to take a chance here, and I'm going to go with the Elks in an upset over Winnipeg, because I think Edmonton's playing really good football. But my question is, how is Trey Ford going to do it against a very, very good Winnipeg defense? And they're an experienced defense on top of that.
Well, now that Mike O'Shea set the winningest head coach record in Winnipeg, and they're just getting ready to set the blueprints for the statue there and the statue here, and now can Winnipeg start losing games so that other teams in the West get a chance? That's all I'll say. I'd like to see Edmonton get in a little bit of return to form, and this is a huge opportunity to do it, because while Winnipeg has looked good the last couple of games, they certainly don't look unbeatable. They have a lot of weaknesses to them, and a lot of moving parts right now. So I know they're getting some receivers back due to injuries, but Edmonton's in pretty good shape right now and has a potential. A huge game. It's going to have a big turnout now, just like they had there in the game against Calgary. So should be a lot of energy there in Edmonton.
And finally, Nick, who will be the Argos X factor on Friday night against Hamilton, and where can our audience follow you again on social media platforms?
Well, I was looking to see if I had a toothpick on my desk, because if he returns, it's 100% going to be William McManus. If he's dressed and ready to play. If you need to follow me on Twitter, X, Nick_small_38.
All right, and we'll put that up there as well. And before we wrap this up again, Nick, for people that are looking to get Argonaut season tickets, you can please contact Alex Christie at 416-815-5334. You can email Alex at alex.christie@mlse.com. And for an Argo season tickets, you can see 9 games a year compared to 1 game for the Raptors or Maple Leaf Blue Jays. I would recommend anybody out there looking at season tickets for the Toronto Argonauts, contact Alex Christie. Nick?
Buddy who went to the Bills game told me it was $60 American just for parking.
Oh yeah, it's not cheap. When I was at the NFL draft in Detroit in April, $100 for parking, which was insane. So yeah, guys, check out the Toronto Argonauts if you want season tickets. Alex Christie, or you can talk to any of the other sales reps there at BMO Field. The Argos are Toronto's most affordable and most winningest team in Toronto, especially with the 18 Grey Cups and 8 of them in the last 40 years.
Yep, and as always, you can also just go to argonauts.ca, check out the articles by Mike Hogan while you're at it.
And also, before we wrap this up, Nick, anybody out there that has a business, you're looking to get your business advertised, please check out the Argo Bounce live audio show. Either contact Nick Small or myself, as we would like to bring on some sponsors for the Argo Bounce live audio show, which is on 21 platforms and on WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia. And I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, Instagram, and on all major audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. And that's it for episode 13, Nick. Nick, as always, what do you want to say? Go
Argos.
Go Argos, and enjoy the game Friday night at BMO Field. And I will be there in spirit, and I will be watching it. And we will see you at the September 28th home game against the Montreal Alouettes for sure. Nick, thank you so much, as always, for coming on the Argo Bounce Live audio show, episode 13. And enjoy the game Friday night between the Argos and those evil QEW rivals, the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
See you guys at the game. Take care, Chris.
Thanks, Nick. All right, guys, that wraps up episode 13 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with Nick Small and myself. And I want to say thank you so much for everybody for watching tonight as well. And again, you can follow Nick Small at Nick_Small_38. And you can follow me on all social media platforms and Chris D. Pomay on Twitter as well. And that's about it, guys. Argos, Tiger Cats, 7:30 Friday night, BMO Field in Toronto. You can get your tickets at argonauts.ca/single game tickets. Or if you can't get down to BMO Field, you can watch the game on TSN or listen to it on TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan and Ben Grant. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching and listening to the Argo Bounce Live audio show, which is also available on WQEE 99.1 FM. I hope everybody has a great night, and we'll see you back here next week for episode 14 of the Argo Bounce Live audio show, as Nick and I will break down the Argos Tiger Cats game and preview their upcoming home game on Saturday, September 28th against the Grey Cup champion Montreal Alouettes. Have a great night, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning into the Argo Bounce live audio show, a weekly podcast show devoted to the 18-time Grey Cup champion
together, fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Together, fight the foe. and courage you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together